Hello and welcome to this special radio town hall meeting against corruption by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMORG. I am Adaobi Obiabomo, the program manager at PRIMORG. PRIMORG is a civil society group with a mandate to promote good governance, participation, and accountability in Nigeria. The MacArthur Foundation supports this town hall meeting against corruption. The battle against corruption in Nigeria has become a journey with no end in sight. This is our reality in Nigeria today, despite several measures put in place by past and present government to fight corruption. On today's town hall meeting, we will hear from leading stakeholders in the anti-corruption campaign, seasoned journalists and stakeholders with vast experience in good governance campaign, why this fight appears to be motion without much movement. They will examine Nigeria's success, challenges, and failure in the anti-corruption fight. This program will feature Tom Odewige, a seasoned journalist and currently the coordinator, Outgrow Hunger Nigeria campaign, Igo Akerega, another seasoned journalist, and President, Civil Liberties Organization, CLO. Lemi Uwegbe, yet another seasoned journalist, and Communication and Advocacy Director, Make a Difference Initiative, while Kolawole Oluwadare, the Deputy Director, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project. For you, the listener, please remember that you can be part of this meeting. How do you rate the war against corruption in Nigeria? Why do you think we appear to be running on the same spot in the battle against corruption in Nigeria? Are you comfortable with the successes recorded so far? Or could we have achieved more as a country? What should the Buhari administration do to advance the fight against corruption? And what must citizens do to encourage the government? Be ready to join us through the phone or share your thoughts with us in the course of the deliberations. We are live on Facebook for those of you who would want to watch the proceedings here. You can join us at Official PRIMORG. That is our Facebook handle. You can begin to send your views to 0902-265-6167. That is 0902-265-6167. Let's now listen to the opinions of some Nigerians on how corruption is the biggest challenge in Nigeria. Is against corruption. Let the people speak.
Hello and welcome to PRIMORG's public feedback series on corruption, called Voices Against Corruption. And we ask, are the anti-corruption agencies, the EFCC and the ICPC, doing enough to curb corruption in Nigeria?
They are not doing enough to fight the corruption in Nigeria. Why I say so? Because day by day, no results. I would say they are doing their job. We'll be seeing results in the country, but no results.
The agency are not really doing enough in fighting against corruption. And by this I mean, we were told, not that we were even told, it was even published, it was all over the news, that the chairman of EFCC was alleged for some corrupt practices. And the truth is that we've never been told if the investigation had been concluded. And if it had been concluded, what is the fate of the chairman? As a person, I cannot really see that this agency are really there to fight corruption.
They are not doing enough because some of the top officials of these agencies are also part of the corrupt members. So there is no way two wrongs can ever make a right. The masses are not seeing any way that these agencies are fighting corruption.
I can see them maybe arresting and taking to courts. The loopholes administratively have not been blocked. They have not severed the conditions that encourage those people committing those offenses. They only after getting who committed it and taking him to court. But those loopholes should be blocked to minimize that corruption.
Whether EFCC, ICPC, or Nigerians is fighting corruption, all these are mirrored. All these institutions are self-decision. They are political mirrored. Unless we ask ourselves, why is it that upon all this effort, government, individual, churches are making, yet there is no result?
They are not. If they are fighting corruption, we'll see the results. Nigeria is retrogressing instead of progressing.
This ICPC, EFCC, they are not doing their job. You said you're part of against corruption. This country, this regime do not fight against any corruption. Nothing has been done.
Welcome again to the program wherever you are listening to us from. Everyday media houses in Nigeria churn out reports of cases of corruption, while these journalists and some civil society organizations are exposing corruption in government. The Buhari administration seemingly ignores these reports. Even the loud cries from the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation are ignored too. The stinking report of the Auditor General in 2017 have been ignored by the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly and the anti-corruption agencies till date. The Buhari administration seems to be losing grip on the anti-corruption fight. Why has the government continued to sweep under the carpet or completely neglected reported cases of corruption without reasons, to the extent that even series of indicting reports by the Auditor General of the Federation could not get government needed attention or that of the anti-graft agencies? Despite the shortcomings and the popular expectations, there have been some success stories. The EFCC, the ICPC, and the Auditor General of the Federation have been raising the red flags. We have trials, convictions, recoveries of monies and assets, and the various probes by the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly. However, the results are still too little to satisfy Nigerians. We are glad to have stakeholders who are experienced in the anti-corruption campaign in the studio to weigh in on the issue today. We will give you, the listener out there, the opportunity to join us via the phone to make your views. We have in the studio, joining us at the moment, Tom Odewigi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin. What would you make of the fight against corruption in Nigeria, going by perception that the government is not doing enough?
Well, perception is very important, but it's not all there is to the fight against corruption. When you accuse someone of corruption, given the fact that it's a criminal offense, you have to be very careful that you have all the facts available. But we do have a problem in this country where managing data, managing information, it's so difficult that at the end of the day, those who actually commit the crime of corruption go free, or the process of making them answerable to the people is so frustrated that everybody gets tired. So, and then we are left with perception, which is the kind of thing you hear in beer parlors. Oh, this one did this, this one did this. And at the end of the day, you are not able to really punish those who have actually committed a crime of corruption.
So some Nigerians accuse the federal government of insincerity in the fight against corruption, given the many corruption reports abandoned as we talk. What dangers does this narrative portend for us as a nation?
Well, in the first place, it's not necessarily given that government is not serious. Government will say that it's doing a lot. If we point at the number of anti-corruption agencies that we have, EFCC, ICPC, we have about 12 of them. And these agencies are being funded by government. However, it is also true that, when the results don't match efforts, then people are bound to be critical. But the point that needs to be made is that we have to examine the present way we are dealing with the issues. It looks like that some agencies are really confusing their roles. For instance, it's embarrassing that EFCC will be disposing of assets that have been seized, whereas you have the Bureau of Public Enterprises you have the Bureau of Public Procurement. These are agencies that have the mandate to dispose of government property or assets. So these are issues that we need to contend with, because in the process of EFCC doing what it's not supposed to do, then it creates more problems, and then there are also issues about whether they have actually followed the due process in doing what they've done.
Overlap of responsibility.
Yes. So these are constraints to the fight against corruption in this country. So if agencies learn to stick to their mandates, then we'll be making headway.
So what are the dangers?
The dangers are that, first, there is loss of confidence in government, in its fight against corruption. Another danger is those who have actually committed the crime of corruption go free. And those two issues, give very strong signals that we are not really serious about fighting corruption in this country. And of course, it also affects the readiness of people to come and invest in Nigeria, because everybody wants to invest in an environment in which there is transparency, there is accountability. And if you can't guarantee that, then people really will be very, very reluctant to invest in Nigeria.
Thank you so much for your submission. We'll still get back to you.
You're welcome.
The dangers of corruption, from what my guest just said, could be loss of confidence, and those who commit crime would go scot-free. Thank you so much. We have joining us from Lagos via the phone, Kolawole Oluwadare, the Deputy Director at SERAP. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, let's quickly roll. SERAP has been consistent with the mandate of holding government accountable since coming on board in 2014. What is your view on anti-corruption in Nigeria, and are we progressing?
That can be looked at from different perspectives. But we can start with the transparency and accountability initiatives of government, particularly in public government in Nigeria. And I'm referring to the present administration of President Buhari, who came in from 2015. So what we see, we cannot really say we made progress in the fight against corruption when there is so much opacity in government. For instance, we can look at the budget and budgetary aspects of Nigerian government, from the budgetary allocation to expenditure and procurement. How open are they? Yes, Nigeria signed on to the OGP in 2016, but what have we seen as the benefits of that? Again, Nigeria has passed the Freedom of Information Act in 2011, but how effective has been? How inclusive is governance in the sense of carrying people along and having vital information as a public? Asset recovery, how much has it recovered since 2015 till date? How have they been extended? Those are various issues within which we can look at the fight against corruption. And I can tell you, the answer to most of those questions, if not more, is not satisfactory. So it appears to be a lot of movement, but in the real sense, little progress.
Little progress. That's a tall order, given the fact that the government came on board with the campaign to fight corruption. SERAP has made so many accountability requests from past and present administration, and most times initiated legal action against them. How do you rate the response level from relevant government bodies?
The response are ranging from mild to sometimes what I would term as aggressiveness on the part of some government, public officers and institutions who perceive demands for accountability to be being in the opposition, and who see requests for information as criticism, which is not. So the response level for requests for information, for instance, through the freedom of information requests that we make from time to time, is not encouraging. And if I have to score the NDAs in Nigeria on a scale of 10, they will barely get a 2.
2?
Yeah.
That's not encouraging at all.
Of course. And I'm saying this is backed up by pretty empirical evidence from us. And I'm talking for SERAP now. This year alone, we sent out more than 20 FY requests. And more often than not, we get negative response if we have responses at all, and which is why we end up in court. It's something that gives us concern, that the request for information, which on its own is not proof of corruption, they are being ignored, and then we end up in court. And government will send lawyers to come to court to defend a citizen's request for information. It's really something that does not speak well of our fight against corruption.
Indeed, it does not speak well of our fight against corruption. So what have been you just mentioned one, that the government does not respond to FOI requests. What are the other challenges that you have faced in the fight against corruption?
One of the challenges is what I mentioned earlier about the perceptions of either public officers or institutions of government, and even some members of the public who perceive what we do and what a lot of civil rights organizations and well-meaning Nigerians are doing as acts of opposition. No, we are just doing our bit to hold government to account in the interest of everyone, including members of the government who will end up being citizens like us when they leave government. And so one of the greatest thing they have will play the perception of public officers and institutions who see demand to accountability and necessarily being acting as the opposite, which prevents that much bigger discourse and the cooperation that would be ultimately to the benefit of the most democratic practice. And then secondly will be the legislation process, which is slow, as we all know. It impedes the works of the court to be able to make pronouncements on some of these critical aspects.
How slow is it?
Sometimes you spend 2 or 3 years in court before you get a judgment, and that doesn't mean that this judgment is going to be obeyed. SERAP has several judgments now that is yet to be obeyed by this government. For instance, the judgment we got from the federal government mandating the Attorney General of the Federation to take steps to challenge the legality of state pension laws and to recover these sums that have been paid out. You can imagine the volume of funds that will come into the fund of the federal government if these wrongfully paid out money are paid into a public coffers. And that judgment is yet to be obeyed. And that is why we have former governors and deputy governors who are either presently serving as ministers or members of the National Assembly, earning those huge pensions from their Israel office while still earning from their present office. It's just not fair.
That's not fair. Okay, do you think the existing anti-corruption laws and agencies are capable of withstanding political interference?
Yeah, looking at the various structures we have the police, we have the ES, the IT, Code of Conduct, and the host of them. Yes, to an extent. But I think the problem comes more from the lack of the political will at the highest level of the state, starting with the president, to be able to allow these anti-corruption agencies to do their work. So, interference coming, we need to talk about the demand and the supply votes. Interference will come from the politicians and those who hold political office or who have political. And then we cannot talk about the anti-corruption agency, that political interference, without addressing that demand side of things. But as to the ability of these agencies to withstand, the legal framework itself does not really help them. The EFCC is a case in point about the powers of appointment and removal of chairman of the EFCC, which is being played out over the years. That itself does not strengthen the EFCC to do its work. The CCT is another thing. How many branches of the CCT we have divisions, as it were? We have just one in Abuja, and that is not enough as it were to fix some issues that have come out from the various after the election issues. Even the CCT appears more in name than in the actual work that they do. So I would think that the legal framework needs to be strengthened if they are to maintain. It is not just the ability of the chief executive officers to withstand the political interference. It is having adequate legal backing to protect them and to allow them to do their work.
Thank you so much, Kolawole Oluwadare, for your intervention.
Thank you very much.
From what he said, that is Kolawole Oluwadare, that the legal framework should be strengthened, and that the executive, talking about the chairman of the EFCC, the ICPC, they should be allowed to execute their job without political interference. We have in the studio Igo Akerega, the President, Civil Liberties Organization. Welcome to the program this afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good to be here.
You have been an activist for well over 20 years. Different media organizations churn out several investigative corruption reports, while the federal government look the other way. What is your view on the neglect of some of these reports, especially by the government, that offered citizens so much hope of fighting corruption before their emergence?
Well, first and foremost, let me just start by saying that when Nigerians or people expect people in government to deliver them from the oppression of corruption, for me, I think they make a huge mistake. In the first place, those in government at the moment are the very ones who have institutionalized corruption over the years from independence. Now, how did we get to where we are? We got to where we are basically also through corruption. First, it started with the colonialists who also thought that giving preference to one region as against others. That in itself is also corruption. So it conferred undue advantage on some set of people within the subset of society to oversee the general well-being of others. So that in itself was the origin and root of corruption. And now what exactly is corruption? Because when we talk about corruption, we use the word in generic terms. But in very clear terms, the dictionary defines corruption basically as dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. But the Corruption Perception Index also says, by way of expanding the definition of corruption, also espouse that when you use your own position, to confer undue advantage on yourself, or your cronies, and your followers, that is corruption. In the case of Nigeria, what has happened over the years is that our political leaders or the ruling class have used their offices to confer undue advantage on themselves and on their cronies, their supporters, and their lackeys, to the detriment of the majority of Nigerians. And that is what has plunged us as a nation into this seeming endless crisis that we have found ourselves. So corruption in itself gives birth to a whole number of generic problems that afflict society, from poverty, insecurity, unemployment, nosedive in the economy, and several other issues. And it doesn't appear as if the country, Nigeria, is in a hurry to exit that. Now, the global watchdog on corruption, the Corruption Perception Index, that is a Berlin-based group that publishes countrywide reports on the rankings of individual countries, have consistently rated Nigeria since 2012 at 144. For this year, 2020,
144.
144.
So where are we now?
We are now even ranked 149. We are scoring 25 over 100, which means we are actually not making any progress. And don't forget, the current administration, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, came to power on clearly three planks: that it was going to fight corruption, it was going to subdue and defeat insecurity, and create employment, and that is improve the economy. In fact, since we are here discussing corruption, you can just see that we are not ranking ourselves. This is a global watchdog on corruption, now ranking us 25 over 100. Now, if there is an examination, will you say that student has passed? It's a clear failure.
In 2019, former acting EFCC chairman Ibrahim Mago revealed that the commission secured 1,204 convictions since 2015. The federal government also corroborated and stated that the feat was the highest number of persons convicted for corruption globally in 2019. And the ICPC was not also left behind, as they announced recovery of an estimated 77 billion in assets in the same year. And in 2020, that's last year, the ICPC also announced the recovery of 16 billion from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. So from what you have said and the little achievements, we still have a long way to go as a country with regards to the fight against corruption. So what must we then do to ensure that the anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria are independent of political interference in the discharge of their duties?
Well, basically, we have to go back to the structure that itself has strengthened the very values of corruption. How do we appoint, you just mentioned the ICPC and the EFCC, how do we appoint the helmsmen of these agencies? Now, the prerogative and the power to appoint the EFCC chairman lies with the president. And then that of the ICPC also lies with the president. I do not know of any country in the world where one man has so much powers to appoint somebody who will oversee his own corruption. It is like being a judge in your own case. I do not, if I'm president of Nigeria and I'm going to appoint somebody, to oversee the FCC and the ICPC, of course I'm going to appoint someone who is going to possibly listen to me. In the first case, when Buhari was elected in 2015, we all hear for the first time he came into the Nigerian lexicon. We hear about body language. So my own body language as president of the country can actually, give a clear sign to whoever that is fighting, whoever that have appointed to fight corruption on where to go. In this case, in Nigeria, we are just in a tinderbox where you saw Magu living. We saw Ribadu living, and all he left in controversial circumstances. And after that, we saw Lamode, we saw this other woman who took over from him, and Magu now we are seeing Abdul Rashid, the 40-year-old young man who himself has been alleged to be a cousin to the president. So this in itself is alleged. A problem. Alleged. I use alleged because it is difficult to prove some of these things. But they have made feeble attempt to deny all of that. But the point I'm making here is that there's no way we can overcome the challenge of corruption that's afflicting us as a country if structurally we do not look at the constitution and possibly try to remove some powers from the president such that he's not the only one who will be appointing the Inspector General of Police, the ICPC chairman, the FCC chairman, all of that. As long as the president has the sole power to appoint all of these persons, I'm sure we are just going to be dancing in a ring, clearly also in the market square. So we are not going to get too far with this.
Let me take you back to what you said, that for the president to appoint the chair of the EFCC and the ICPC to oversee his own corruption. What do you mean by that?
Well, we all know that the president also sits on top. Don't forget, Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa. And if you look at the CPI index, corruption is higher or is highest in government office and within the political class. So the president himself cannot also remove himself from these allegations of corruption. We have seen people who are close to Mr. President fingered for corruption and for also looting the treasury. We have seen state governors. I'm from Delta State. We just saw the last week how even the federal government was going to repatriate 43.2 million pounds from Britain. Yes, the argument has been that it is international diplomacy between Nigeria and Britain, but you can also see the struggle by agents of the federal government, led by the Attorney General of the Federation, to get the federal government to spend this money. Why is there so much interest for federal agents or federal officials to spend the money so that they can award contracts? And we also know that it is from the processes of awarding contract that these monies also by themselves are transferred to individual accounts. So for me, I'm not exempting anyone from beginning from those who believe that Mr. President is incorruptible and his ministers and the people he has appointed are incorruptible. I'm not in that class. I'm not sharing in that kind of Christmas party to applaud anyone in government to think that they are incorruptible. If we are still having 25 over 100 in 2020, and then we are still standing at 149 over 180 countries that is x-rayed by the CPI, then I'm sure that we have not gone too far. We have not done too well as a government and as a people.
You didn't quite answer my first question on corruption reports that have been ignored by the government.
Oh yes, they will ignore those reports because it's like asking people who they themselves are corrupt to send themselves to jail. It's not going to work. A lot of reports have come out on corruption over the years. We Nigerians will not be deluded with any expectation or hope that these individuals are going to probe themselves. Now, you from the records or the statistics you read out earlier, you said that the EFCC possibly had 1,000 successful prosecution and the ICPC the same. Now, if you look at even that, and they are clapping for themselves that is an achievement. In a country of over 200 million people, you are possibly recording 1,000 successful prosecution. And I must also tell you, out of this 1,000 successful prosecution, there may be people who stole goods You know, also who stole some pieces, a small amount of money. So what are the ministers? What are ministers? What are governors? What are top government officials who should be in jail? They should come out with the names of people. The people they claim that have successfully prosecuted. They should come out with the names so that we will know they are fighting corruption. So I don't think I'm impressed. And most Nigerians are not impressed.
Thank you so much for your submission, but we'll still get back to you. We have a text message from Maxwell, and he says, the war against corruption in Nigeria is a waste of state resources given the fact that government is selective in her fight against corruption. Wow. Thank you so much for your contribution as we continue to campaign and advocate that the anti-corruption agencies should put in more in the fight against corruption. We're still trying to get through to Alaka Muturayo, the Executive Director of Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. Once we're able to connect with her, we'll bring her to join us. But before then, we want you, the citizen listening, to join the conversation through the phone line. How would you rate the war against corruption in Nigeria? Why do you think we appear to be running on the same spot in the battle against corruption in Nigeria? And are you comfortable with the successes recorded so far? Or could we have achieved more as a country? And what should the Buhari administration do to advance the fight against corruption? And what must citizens do to encourage the government? While we are waiting for your call, we have Lemi Uwebe joining us. He is the Communication and Advocacy Director at Make a Difference Initiative. Thank you for being a part of this program.
Thank you for having me.
Let's quickly take this call. Hello.
Hello? Yeah, this is Sebastian Kaya calling from Asokoro.
Let's hear you.
Yes, actually corruption in this country, for me to rate the corruption fight in Nigeria is 10 over 100.
10 over 100. Why is that so?
Yes. Why so? Because the man in the stadium in the city, they said, what he has actually nailed the hammer on the nail or on the head of the nail. By telling us that you cannot appoint somebody to oversee your own corruption. Because that person you are appointing to oversee your corruption can never tell you on face and tell you that this what you have done is actually wrong. Because you are under him and he can push you at any moment, at any time.
Thank you so much for your contribution. If we must fight corruption, then the president shouldn't be the one to appoint the chair of the EFCC and the ICPC. Do you agree with that first before we go on?
Okay, interestingly, we must trust some persons with the responsibility. But it's been a long debate, and that debate about who should appoint people to fight corruption had even gone so far since the 1999. Many have even argued that the Chief Justice of Nigeria and his team should have the responsibility of appointing anti-corruption agencies bosses, including even INEC. Okay, but the way the constitution is now, it has made the president to be like a maximum ruler. The Nigerian president is the most powerful president in the world, both in terms of how our constitution is structured and in terms of how politics is played.
So you don't agree that the president should be the one to appoint?
In a proper climate, it shouldn't be. There should be a check. The president is the head of government, and there's no way in the Nigerian setting that an anti-corruption Caesar will have the courage to actually look the president in the eye and say, I am probing you. Remember, even it happened sometime during Nuhu Ribadu's time when Obasanjo was Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was the then president, and Orjiu's Okalu accused him of certain infraction. And Nuhu Ribadu, as courageous as he was perceived to have been then, had to even make some very condescending statements about how the president was gracious to receive us, and so that's why we shouldn't have the president so powerful as the constitution has made. They must whittle down on that and also whittle down on the power in the center.
Thank you so much for that. And you can send a text message or a WhatsApp message to 0902 265 6167. Hello? Hello?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Your name and where you're calling from?
This is Mr. from
Let's hear you.
You see, when the head is corrupt, there's nothing the body can do. As Mr. are saying it is not hard in any country that the president will appoint interested and the people in the country will move for time. You see, like the other one, they say he appointed his cousin, his user. He had time with cousin. If he just gathered in that whatever you saw happen, he would do. You understand?
Okay.
And now, we don't appoint something for one side of the country. It's from here, so that people will understand that here you are fair. That you don't have any hidden agenda. It is not true. And the most happy is that what Nigerians are saying is still doing it. So what do you expect?
Okay.
Thank
you so much, and God will help us indeed. Let me get back to my guest in the studio, Lemi Ugwebe, the Communication and Advocacy Director, Make a Difference Initiative. Let us begin with your perspective. How do you rate the war against corruption in Nigeria since 1999, and do you think we are on the right track? Igor Akerega said from statistics he gave us that Nigeria is being rated 25 out of 100. What is your perception?
Okay, if we go by the Global Perception Index and we compare with the conversation you had, the engagement you had with Nigerians on the streets that you interviewed, you would find that the Global Perception Index is even quite charitable to our country in its rating, because all of the people you interviewed, all of them gave Nigeria very low marks. They do not agree that anything genuinely is being done. Okay, now in 1999, and I'll do a comparison between what it was like during the beginning of our renaissance democracy in 1999 under the Chief Olusegun Obasanjo's administration, and compared to what we have under the Muhammadu Buhari administration. In 1999, Obasanjo set the ball rolling, setting up ICPC, setting up AFCC in the first term in office. Now, at some point, there was argument that he was using those agencies of government to witch hunt political opponents. But we found that under Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, the people who suffered mostly, were tried, were convicted, lost their jobs, were shamed, were actually people closest to him. It doesn't mean that the president then, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, was incorruptible, but he cared much more about the perception. How do Nigerians see it? How does the world see my battle against corruption? So the moment prima facie evidence is brought before the Chief Olusegun Obasanjo that one of his officers, friends, cronies were corrupt, he immediately decisively dealt with them. Example, Chief Semi Afolabi of blessed memory as Internal Affairs Minister, going through the ID card scam. You know that he was relieved, he was arrested, he was locked up, he was tried till he lost his life. Mustafa Balogun was also the IG of police, and he was his boy, he was like a son. Obasanjo dealt with him seriously. He lost his job, he's got his assets seized and all of that.
So
Otumba Fashawe, you know, you can count them, but you will hardly count who are those enemies he supposedly witch hunted politically. But under the Muhammadu Buhari regime, this is an administration that rode on the crest of anti-corruption, incorruptibility, will restore security and all that. And the people went and voted him. But what is his own attitude to it? Igor referred to body language. Yes, at a time, look at it. At a time before he won the election, the selling point was Megaskia, a man of integrity. But how many ministers now, how many of the APC members dare come out now and sell and even refer to his integrity? Nobody speaks about it again. Initially it was body language, integrity. Nobody speaks about it. Why is that so? Because again, as the Hausas will say, aboki barawo ni. The friend of a thief is a thief. When you obnob, when you seem to play with people who are perceived to be corrupt, this secretary of the federation, the secretary to the government of the federation, Babashe, was accused. It took forever. Nigerians kept calling for a sack. It took forever before Buhari would do anything.
So are we on the right track?
We are definitely. The current president has plunged us 6 decades backward in the fight to rid the nation of corruption. And this is clear, this is loud, because if nothing else, corruption, we look at corruption and we still talk about as if it's just about money. When you pass a law, sign a bill into a law and fail to uphold and to comply with its provision, it is corruption. The president last year passed a bill on Police Act which allows the IG to retire at 35 when he's 35 years. The president breached the same law he passed. That is corruption. When you give people of one region appointments to the detriment of others, that is corruption, because abuse of power and abuse of office is one of the deadliest form of corruption beyond stealing money.
Thank you for your contribution. Corruption has not done us any good as a nation. We'll get back to you, but let's quickly take Igor Akerega. Now we've talked about the issues, the dangers of corruption, how far we have fared as in the country. The need for citizens to participate. You can't talk about corruption without the citizens. The need for citizens to participate in governance and anti-corruption fight cannot be overemphasized. What is your charge to the citizens and the Buhari-led administration in winning the war against corruption? But before you answer that, let's take this call. Hello?
Hello.
Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is I'm calling from Chaco.
Let's hear you.
If I want to rate Nigeria in terms of corruption, I would say 10 over 100.
10 over 100.
Over 100. And the reason is that, according to what we spoke about, like 50%, if you want to checkmate corruption, it's not the presidency should be appointing those that appointed that will be impeach people that is corrupt. It's supposed to lead the harm from the area of corruption, allow another party to appoint somebody that will be checkmate things with corrupt. Except we do that will be no way forward. We will continue to be dancing around the bush, and people will continue to be stealing, and people will continue to do something which is not good in this country. That is my thing.
Thank you so much. This is the second caller who has just said that the president shouldn't be the one to appoint the chair of the EFCC and the ICPC. Hello?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Your name and where you're calling from?
Okay. My name is Prince Namasa. I'm within a roundabout. So I'm calling from Abuja here. I want to pick up on, my name is Prince Namasa.
Prince, let's hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to speak on the last man who spoke something about constitution. You see, the man has very small. The point here is that once we continue to disagree with ourselves that the present constitution is an upright one, then we are making no headway. The present constitution is so damaging the nation. It requires an absolute calling so that everything that must be amended, that needed to be amended, will be amended. You cannot tell me that we have something that is supporting me from left angle, and I know that I'm in charge, and I won't find a way from the right angle to overcome it. We are just like a man said. I want to tell you that if we want to change the course of this nation, if we are moving in the direction of rethinking,
please wrap up.
Towards our constitution. All my write-ups, everything I have said about the country is based on the constitution.
Thank you so much.
I want to tell you.
Thank you so much. Our time is almost up. But talking about constitution, I don't know how many citizens submitted memorandum to the National Assembly. Sometime last year, I don't know if that is up. Citizens were charged to submit memorandum to the National Assembly because they were at that time working on the constitution review. But that is it. Igor Kerega, back to the question I asked you, the need for citizens to participate in governance and anti-corruption fight cannot be overemphasized. What is your charge to these citizens and the Buhari-led administration in winning the war against corruption?
Well, first and foremost, I think that citizens should not be tired. They should continue to mobilize themselves, mobilize around common issues that is affecting them, the issues of trying to take back their country. We saw what happened in the United States. We saw what happened even in Ghana here, how citizens are able to mobilize to vote in popular candidates. So we are also part of what has afflicted us. Edwidge Cleaver, an American philosopher, did say that one is either part of a solution or part of the problem. So what has been the position of citizens in what is unfolding before all of us? We should all be guilty. We should also say we are guilty of what has happened. In 2015, during the election, a lot of people said that Buhari was a great man of integrity, a messiah who was coming to deliver this country from all the troubles that you can ever imagine. Now it is very clear, it has unfolded before our very eyes, that rather than helping us solve some of the problems he met on the ground, the problems have rather ballooned. That's one. So citizens themselves must also now aggregate their own consciousness, must also now realize that if you take salt and rice and money and all that and put people in power, then you have to contend with them for another 4 years, such that they can visit upon you unimaginable suffering. So that is just the position. Now, in terms of electoral and participatory democracy, citizens should now go and get their own voters card and ensure that even after voting, they should be prepared to resist any manipulation of the outcome of the electoral process, such that we can get the best people in power. And the political parties and the internal political parties practices must ensure that men of integrity emerge as their own candidate, such that issues of imposition, godfatherism should be eschewed. Nigerian citizens have to wake up. They need to mobilize, shut down their front lines, whether ethnicity, religion, and all of that. Close all of those gaps. Unify to chase out from power people who have decided to aggregate and give out to themselves, sovereign power over every other person.
Thank you so much. Let's quickly take Tom Oderije for his last submission before we wrap up. Igor Akarela talked about citizens' participation and the political parties. So how can we keep the investigative journalists and civil society organizations motivated given the challenges they face in exposing corruption?
Well, we have a responsibility to protect those who are involved in investigative journalism, because it is from them we know, we have facts, we have information about the extent to which this country has sunk in the area of corruption. And then we also have to encourage whistleblowers, because there is a nexus between whistleblowers and those who are involved in investigating journalism. Unless we do this, then people will be too timid, will be too shy, even too afraid to come up with information. We did make some headway a couple of years ago when people were coming out with information that led to groundbreaking, work in terms of unearthing those who are corrupt. But I think the establishment got scared because they didn't know the extent to which the whistleblowers will go. So let's encourage government to submit to the enactment of a law to protect whistleblowers. And let us also commit to protecting journalists who are putting their lives on the line, investigating corruption. Thank you very
so much. Talking about whistleblowing legislation, we have a policy, but we don't have a legislation yet. Let's quickly take Lemi Ugebe. And what must the new helmsman do differently, talking about the EFCC chair, to succeed in the fight against corruption? In 1 minute.
Wow, I wish I didn't have the task of talking about that, because again, there's systemic corruption. And if you see, almost everybody who has been chairman of EFCC always ended being removed through controversial circumstances.
So what can he
do differently? What should he do differently? perhaps try to be above board, try to rise beyond all of the intricacies and the big power plays that he will, of course, definitely try to influence him, and uphold the Constitution. If he understands that his loyalty is to the people and to the Constitution of the Federal Republic, his loyalty is not to the president. Because the problem with public office holders and appointees of government is that they think that the president is the one paying their salary, their loyalty is to the president. No, once he realizes and behaves as though his loyalty is to the Constitution, then he will follow the Constitution to the letter and the oath of office in dispensing with his responsibility as the EFCC Caesar.
Thank you so much for your contribution. The chairman of the EFCC, his allegiance should be to the citizens and not the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you for your intervention. The citizens and the media should not relent in the fight against corruption. Let's take this last call. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Your name and where you're calling from. You have 30 seconds.
I'm calling from Central Area.
Okay, let's quickly hear you. Go ahead.
Somewhere from Central Area.
Go ahead, 30 seconds, please.
What I want to say, my constitution is this. Why is it that people are not talking about restructuring of this country? This country, the truth of the matter is that we found ourselves in a faulty foundation. The foundation of this country is faulty.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Our time is almost up. You can send a text message 0902-265-6167. Whistleblower legislation should be encouraged. The battle against corruption in Nigeria has become a journey with no end. And what must we do to ensure that the war against corruption is won? With this, we have come to the end of this radio town hall meeting. Citizens should be encouraged, the media should be encouraged, investigative journalists should be encouraged. Do not relent in the fight against corruption. And we also need a whistleblower legislation. We've come to the end of this special radio town hall meeting against corruption. We sincerely appreciate our guests. Tom Odewige, Coordinator, Outgrow Hunger Nigeria Campaign. Igo Akariga, President, Civil Liberties Organization. Lemi Uwebe, Communication and Advocacy Director, Make a Difference Initiative. And Kolawole Oluwadare, the Deputy Director, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, who spoke to us via the phone from Lagos. And we appreciate all of you. To those watching us via Facebook, we appreciate you. Those who called in and sent text messages, we also appreciate you. If you have a message for us or you want to react to what you heard on this program, please reach us through 0902-265-6167. That is 0902-265-6167 or info@primorg.org. PRIMORG is spelled PRIMORG. Please visit the news page of our website, news.primorg.org. That is news.primorg.org. For all the details of our reports, videos and interviews, visit our website, primorg.org, to get all the information about PRIMORG. Again, PRIMORG is spelled PRIMORG. PRIMORG's engagement against corruption is supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation at its website, macfound.org. We will give you enough notice for our next radio town hall meeting here. Please follow us on all our social media platforms at Official PRIMORG to get timely information on our activities. Many thanks to the PRIMORG team for the wonderful work. The Executive Director of PRIMORG's Radio Town Hall Meeting Series is Okiria Agbonsuremi. I am Adaobi Obiabumo. Stay safe.